a lot of the discussion in general with regard to vaccine mandates, ultimately goes back to this case. And it's kind of interesting. I think it's been misread in a number of ways. This was a statute that allowed localities to require smallpox vaccination. A couple of things. Number one, it explicitly just was a state statute. So that really doesn't support the federal, any kind of a federal mandate. But additionally, the requirement was backed up with a $5 fine. And, which is probably about, if I recall correctly, about $155 in 2021 dollars. So, I mean, non-trivial, but not the same as take the jab or, you're going to lose your employment, your livelihood, take the jab, or your employer's going to be hit with $14,000 per incidence fines. So it's sort of something that's different in kind in terms of the penalty that we're talking about. But the other thing is, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I feel like, if you take a look, that decision was relied upon by one of the most infamous Supreme Court decisions in, modern history, Buck versus Bell, which was a case in which Oliver Wendell Holmes went ahead and upheld a statute that required forced sterilization. So that, most people, if they know that case for anything, they know it for the quote, 3 generations of idiots are enough. If that quote isn't enough to raise some questions about the decision, where it actually relied on Jacobson, it said, essentially that the logic of Jacobson with regard to compelling vaccinations was sufficient to support cutting fallopian tubes. And that's roughly almost an exact quote. Just let that sit out there for a moment. I mean, that's it is shocking, I think, to even hear those words said, and it goes to why, really, Buck versus Bell has become an anti-precedent, which is to say, I mean, you sort of learn about there are these decisions that you hear about in law school that have become so odious. They may not have expressly been struck down by the court, but they almost don't need to be. We look back at them and we recognize they're a mistake, and they're almost always cited, if they are at all, to show how, for the principle that they were wrong. And so the idea that the origins of Buck really was in Jacobson, and the idea that government could force you to take a vaccine, this should give us pause about whether or not this is a great precedent to be relying upon for forced vaccinations.
That's a great and powerful point, and I'm going to steal it from you.
Please steal away.